feel like I need to uninstall everything related to Google Maps. I don't understand why I keep getting this. Java EXE. Why I'm going to keep getting these errors. Hold up. Why can't I? It's still building. I feel like I have to uninstall everything. Are you building? Hold up. Mm,
Still haven't landed that second monitor.
Negative.
They make little portable ones that you can use with laptops pretty well. I don't have one, but
Do they?
yeah.
Like, yeah. I have my desk is literally $20, and I really don't have that much. It's like a foldable table that you would bring to like a park.
Oh,
'Cause I thought about bringing it to the beach and just making the beach my office, but it'll probably sink in the sand.
so you work just straight on the laptop? You don't have a docking station, keyboard, mouse, all that stuff?
No.
Do you think that makes you less productive?
What makes me less well, yes, but I don't think it's dramatic. What makes me less productive is not having dual monitors and and needing documentation to program to. So, for example, whether it's anomalies that are reported or actual like business requirements, yeah, I context switch between my editor and a Word doc or I don't know, MS Teams website. That becomes time consuming. Or even I still use Microsoft Paint to capture information, especially when I'm debugging. I'll like throw hella screenshots of call stacks or stack traces.
Yeah, I'll do that occasionally. Do you use a screen capture tool or just the built-in snippet tool or what?
No, I've never learned how to use that stuff. I literally just hit Alt, print screen, and then launch Microsoft Paint, paste it in there, and then select the area or region, and then crop it. And that's it's like a 5-step procedure.
So if you do, I think it's now on Windows, if you do Windows Shift S, that's what
Windows Shift S.
yeah.
Windows Shift S. Okay, and then what?
Then you get this. So then you can grab a screenshot if you're just looking for a part of it. So just drag, like if you want to do that, then it'll copy to your clipboard. You still could still throw it into Paint or whatever.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's another tool I've used called GreenShot, and GreenShot is just it will do the same thing effectively, but what it does a little better is that it'll have an option to open directly in Paint or open directly in its own viewer editor tool, or any other number of tools that you want to open it in. So GreenShot's a really, really good one for that, and that actually connects to your print screen. So you just type, when you click print screen, it immediately comes up. You don't need to remember that it's Win Shift S. I don't know.
Man, that helps me out.
Well,
you see my Twitter poll of what's more complicated to build and to troubleshoot?
I
mobile,
did.
Mobile native, mobile cross-platform, or web applications? Because right now, man, I've spent 2 hours of my life this morning trying to diagnose why I have like the seg fault error on my Android application, and I have no clue why. And it's just stuff is too complicated nowadays. I know they're doing a lot behind the scenes, but like this stuff is way too complicated to diagnose.
I would say that probably I mean, there's in that question, it depends so much, but you're talking about doing Xamarin probably versus regular .NET Dev. I would still say web is probably then. The reason being is that you have to swap into JavaScript land. You can't just write it all in .NET and have the tooling. But I suppose the tooling is actually better than probably what you get with emulators, maybe. And you don't have to worry about the emulation and stuff, but you still run into stuff like, it's the issues and things like that. So
I believe it's the reliance on so many third-party libraries and their reliance on so many third-party libraries and their reliance that like that's where I'm stuck at right now. Like if you see my error messages, I just have all these versions that
DLL
version. Yeah, and it's like I've been doing this for like 2 hours, and it's like now I'm at the point where I'm just going to uninstall everything that I know has something to do with the issue. So including this Google Maps, like install you too. Like it's just frustrating, man. It makes me not want to work on this.
Yeah, I mean, you can run into those with web dev. It's probably less so, I would say. Like I maybe remember a few times where we've used libraries in like our Vue app where we've had some conflicts or something like that, but yeah, not like this. So have you looked at the Uno platform thing?
No. I've listened to a couple podcasts on it, but my ignorance tells me it's not worth looking into because if it's not mature, I don't want to try to debug it.
Oh, I thought it was mature. I thought it was.
I thought Uno was built by that Xamarin personality, not James Montemagno, but his podcast buddy on Merge Conflict.
Yeah, I mean, it's on version 3, and it was originally released in 2018, so it's had enough probably development, I'm guessing, for it to be stable now. But
nah, I haven't looked into it. I'm like, what? Once I get this thing quote unquote done, I'm so done with mobile development. I'm sure I'm saying that in like 3 years from now, I'm still going to be like just balls deep in it. But like, I don't like this. I don't like when you have to build complex mobile experiences. Like this crap gets like when it's working, but like man, I had the audacity to want to upgrade frameworks and libraries because I want to take advantage of bug fixes and optimizations. And I always run into this every single time, or damn near every single time. It's like I'm done with this, man. It's it a passion project is supposed to be based on passion, not dread. You know what I mean? It's just I'm getting frustrated.
well, passion isn't a good driver of anything, if you're to believe pretty much every expert on the topic. You run out of passion, and then what are you driving on? Passion only gets you so far.
Being recognized as a finisher. I
Yeah.
mean, that's pretty much what I'm operating off of right now. Is I'll pretty much partition it into, okay, I spent 2 years of my life on this. Am I going to be remembered as a finisher, or like everybody else that develops another interest and always has a reason to not complete anything in life? And so, like,
Yeah,
I don't want to contribute to that identity. You know?
I think that makes sense as long as you aren't giving up on other things that might be more promising. Because I mean, there is some cost, like, and you've clearly gone beyond the point that most people go with stuff. So I wouldn't say that you've like finishing isn't necessarily like you've shown commitment over the course of almost 3 years. Which is more than what most people do on a single project unless it takes off and then they're kind of sucked into it. But then they might like it for other reasons. But there's really like when you're doing this, there's no feedback for you to drive on. It's all pure commitment. So I don't think anybody would question your ability to continue working on stuff and see it through to completion. But again, if you're giving up on other things that you could be learning or other opportunities because you're doing this, and those opportunities might yield better results, then you're only doing this because it's sunk cost. You've made it this far. You can't stop now. Well, yeah, you can.
Well, my
So-
ego is attached to this, and one thing I've learned in life since my overdose is when you don't have an ego, I think life becomes very dangerous. When you don't have any interests, when you have no drive whatsoever, when nothing is pushing you, it's dangerous.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's exactly where I've been for a very, very long time, or was for a very long time. I think I'm in a good place now, though. It's surprising, like how just working on even just hacking away at this fantasy console thing has just really changed my whole demeanor and perspective and made me excited about programming again. So
Yeah, you've been putting some hours in on it. Like I'll launch YouTube, whether it's on my TV or on my phone, and I'll see yours like show up immediately as live streaming. Okay.
yeah, although I took
You didn't tap out yet.
I took a few days off, but I start my new job next Tuesday, so we'll see how that. That's an 8 hours I won't have, or better that I won't have every week then, or every day that I have now. But I'm dedicated to getting it to an initial release, hopefully before that day. comes. So I did a major refactoring yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think I'm in a lot better spot with it in terms of there was with that whole multi-threading thing. When what would happen is I'd be in the middle of a data update in one thread or mutating the memory state, but then the display would happen, so there'd be flickers and stuff like that. But now I've pushed it so that all actual updates basically run through the main what, for lack of a better term, UI thread. In fact, all of them do get pushed through there. So I think it's a much better place to be in.
Do you have a UI? Like, I always see you coding, but I haven't seen you like actually run it.
Oh yeah. There's a UI. It's rudimentary because that's the way it's supposed to be. But I just, yeah, I can show you quick. Because it's based off I'll go off of that screen and put it over there. One sec. So if we both share, oh, I see. It comes in as another channel down below. Then you're able to switch to it. Interesting. So, like I said, it's not fantastic, but I don't know if you've ever used a TI-83 calculator. Probably in college, maybe.
I had a TI-89.
That operates at that.
I wouldn't have got through physics without that calculator. Like, real talk. I had all the formulas in there. Like, there is no way I was going to be able to memorize all those formulas to get through physics. I think I had to take physics 1 and 2. And like, my mind is not wired like that at all. Anyways, guy, how are you? I'm kind of bored of web development with .NET and wanted to try mobile with F#, but you scared me a little bit now. Actually, if you want idiomatic mobile development with F#, it's there. So like, I think Don Syme actually like dedicated himself last year or a couple years ago to a Xamarin F# framework-ish type template. And so it's using model view update as a pattern. And I knew of one developer that actively uses that. I don't know what that framework. I don't know what the framework is called. But if you want to try that, like, my stuff is still using MVVM, and so my issue really isn't F# and Xamarin. My issue is really just Xamarin. Like, that's my issue, because it's so many moving parts. It's like the NASA like space shuttle. It does its job occasionally, but it's so much maintenance involved. Like, I just now I think twice about upgrading any of my NuGet packages, because it takes me like a full business day just to resolve the issues. And that might be maybe due to my IQ not being high enough, but it's just a turn off, man. I'm gonna turn into Incredible Hulk. I'm so angry with this right now. Anyway, so I'm looking at your screen. Oh yeah, you were asking me about a TI-89, or you said TI-81. I said I had TI-81.
Well, TI-83. I mean, they all were pretty much the same kind of like deal. Like the TI, there's a TI-84 that's got a much bigger screen now, I think. But anyways, yeah. So I mean, it's based on this TI basic programming. That's a pretty good example of what you would write on the calculator. So you probably wrote all your formulas and stuff in these kinds of deals.
Yeah, I would do copy paste and then just swap out the variables, the X's and Y's with literal numbers when I would take my tests. So
yeah, well, I mean, you could have written a program to just do it and then fill it out, I suppose. But I suppose if you had to show your work or whatever, you'd have to know the bits of it.
question is, with smartphones, do people still buy TI calculators, or are smartphones forbidden because they feel like they're going to be used for cheating, whatever cheating means?
Yeah, I think cheating plus then there's not a uniform, like everyone's got different phones and stuff like that, and some families can't afford it. The school would have to buy it, I believe.
They have to buy what? They didn't. I had a,
They didn't buy the calculator. Yeah, I know, but they did have calculators for classes that needed them, at least in my school.
not my school. I had to shell out, I think, like $100. What? I think I shelled out
$100, yeah.
$40 for
Yeah,
it.
they're expensive
And
still.
I had to get it because there's no way I'm going to memorize all that stuff. Like, it's no way. And I pay way too. Like, I have to pay for college on my own. Like, it's no. I have to pass this class. So
Yeah, but anyways, yeah. So I mean, I did a lot of programming on the calculator back in school. Like that's the first programming I ever did. So like I have fond memories of that thing. So I'm trying to base it off of that. But this is mono game, as you can see here. I can't get that stupid icon to change for some reason. I've tried everything. But this is a mono game UI or whatever. And all I do is basically render it to a, oh my gosh. I think what I do, wrong one.
I can't believe you use a white editor.
I started doing that because of the, well, I actually use the white editor quite often anyways, but I started doing it because I've heard that for streaming, it's better than dark. Mode.
It doesn't bother your eyes. You don't get like headaches.
This is so bad, this code right here, but no, not really. Or maybe I do. I don't know. I get headaches. I've been getting headaches regardless for the last month, but so what I do is I just render everything to a texture in monogame, and then I do a single sprite batch draw here, and that's the UI. So everything is actually software rendered to a buffer in this display buffer here, and I gotta refactor some of this out, but this is where the actual images get drawn to.
You actually use underscores for your member variables.
For private ones, I do. And that's just a preference because it's because oftentimes then I'll show you why I like that. I don't like doing this dot.
Oh yeah, I don't like that either.
Or whatever. If I had like a I don't know, if this came in as a buffer, then I can just do this. So the underscore would differentiate between the parameter and this. So it's just a shorthand for saying this. That's the only reason I do that. The last company I worked for, they didn't allow this convention, so I did use this for constructors or whatever, but for my personal stuff, I use the underscores. But yeah, it's just convention. But yeah, that's the ugly UI that I'm building out. But I had a rudimentary editor working and stuff like that. But after the refactor yesterday, I have to now go back and get that working again. But here's what the programs are, just Python programs. But yeah, I don't know. They're not really too intense right now. And then anyways, what I want to do is find a good example of a game that's created for a lot of different fantasy consoles, and then recreate it in this just to make sure that I can do everything those things can do. I need like a test, like a, I don't know, fantasy console test or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that what like Visual Studio does, or what the C# compiler does or something? Is they take some of the largest repos, and part of their test is to compile it or build it.
Probably. I don't know.
So you would think that I would now be able to add Xamarin Forms Google Maps. All right. You would think I would be able to do that because I mean that's what it's complaining about. Right. After I just uninstalled it and I tried to reinstall it and it was started. Oh no, we're not going to let you do that. Nope, nope. You have all these dependencies that you need to address, but I don't have any dependencies in here. I just checked. I don't have any of that stuff. Right. I don't have anything dealing with Android compatibility in here. They're like, no, we don't care. We want you to do something with Android compatibility. Like, I'm so done with this. F Xamarin, F Microsoft, F software development. I'm gonna be a bounty hunter, man. I'm done with this.
Yeah, when stuff doesn't work quite right, it drives you nuts. That's for sure. I don't know. I don't know. You might like looking at some modern web dev frameworks. Have to get beyond the tooling with if you can use TypeScript where you can do some functional programming type stuff. I don't know, that building out components for like the experience is better. So maybe Blazor would be, I don't know, maybe Blazor is something you might want to look at.
I'm going to be a hands-off architect. I'm just going to draw pictures.
How's your diagramming skills?
No, they're not good. Like, I noticed you were doing a good job yesterday when you were showing me examples. I think that was yesterday when I was chiming in on your live stream. Like, you weren't using Visio though. What were you using?
So it's a tool called Draw.io. There's an online tool, but I downloaded the standalone for it. But yeah, I think it's just you just go to draw.io in the browser.
Yeah.
You can just save it right to your storage or whatever, and it's totally free. There's some pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of options for diagrams and stuff. So
yeah, I've honestly I've never really appreciated hands-off architects. Like, I've never appreciated them drawing like system diagrams. Like, okay, this is the desktop application, or this is the mobile application you want me to build. Like, why do I care about the exact server name? Like, why does that need to be in the image? Like, I don't. My focus is building the user experience via the application, right? Like, I don't care about all the other environment. I don't care about all the security widgets that you drew on. I don't care about any of that stuff. I'm sure it's relevant for like stakeholders, like the enterprise, but I don't care about it. And I remember like the enterprise architects like wanted me to draw those same diagrams. I'm like, I don't see the point in doing that. Like, I know there's value in like having that documentation to share, but like that's, to me, that's not really, there's no real return on investment to do that. It's getting some code to work, and then we can document all we want where things are located at, you know.
yeah, I don't really think diagrams are I mean, I think they're needed for certain things. Physical, possibly physical stuff that doesn't change very often. Like that kind of makes sense to know the physical layout of your architecture and stuff like that. But software changes so often that it's not really useful. I mean, and as documentation, it's terrible. I mean, because it goes out of date so quickly.
But the gatekeepers, people that aren't technical, they see pretty pictures and they're like toddlers. They're like, ooh, okay, yeah, this is professional. So like, I think I understand when it's within a regulated domain or industry. Like, you have to document your thoughts, your vision, and reduce risk by having documentation so that people can sign off on it. I understand that for highly regulated areas, I get that part, but the majority of the work that I get arguably isn't highly regulated, and it's just doodling, and I feel like it's a waste of time given the time that they decide to put effort into that. Like I feel like that stuff can really come at the end because it's almost never going to, the output is almost never going to align with the original vision, right? If it does, then your market doesn't change whatsoever, and that's questionable, right?
Yeah,
If you work in military defense or something, like it's questionable that it doesn't change.
yeah, I mean, all diagramming is just to communicate thoughts, but the act of diagramming itself also helps solidify understanding. It just in the same way that doing coding does. Um, it can be when you're saying design, you're thinking through, and not every diagram is equal either. In that, so like a state diagram, if you're going to do, if you were doing hardware interfacing with hardware, state diagrams are probably very, very useful to think through the various states and what happens and how they transition away from a particular state and what triggers will do that. Like state diagrams, that's component diagrams and stuff like that can and
Yeah, but
really useful for talking about like how services will connect and interact to um, you know realize a scenario. I think like entity control boundary ones are really good too, for mapping out and deciding, what if you're doing ports and adapter architecture, like what ports
yeah, but like
you
drawing a
make.
sequence diagram for a mobile experience, like to me
Yeah,
that's just a waste of effort. It is.
yeah. Unless you're
It's very hardware specific. Like I mean, I've worked for a security company. Well, it's not security. I worked for a hacking company, but when it involves the government, it's not called hacking. It's called surveillance. And like, yeah, everything revolved around their hardware. And so I can understand that a lot better. But just building a telehealth mobile application and doing sequence diagrams, like it's just a waste. I
yeah,
don't
it's
appreciate it.
it's only in useful in terms of if you're trying to communicate the idea to someone else, uh, for that moment of time, or for the purposes of getting feedback to design before you start to code. Um, but that's not it. Like sequence diagrams I mean, they can't tell the whole story. And if you spend your time trying to make them super detailed, they're going to be, you're going to waste a lot of time. You just want to get the base interactions in there so that when you're discussing it with someone, they can visualize, because visualization I mean, it's true. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. I mean, you can see it and see how the interactions are going to go back and forth. And you can tell some things from, a sequence diagram. Is this going to be a chatty application? Is it going to be chunky in the way it communicates back and forth to the server? What actions are going to be needed? There's some stuff like that, but sequence diagrams are probably one of the the most annoying ones to build. There's some libraries where I've looked at programmatic sequence diagram creation, because you should just be able to write a basic script in a program and have it generate the sequence diagram for you. Like you just you create classes of actors or whatever, and then you document in code the interactions between them, and then just generate the sequence diagram
Yeah.
from it, and then you can use that to communicate. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what I think that diagramming isn't the issue, because it's a useful tool if you know how to use it, and to communicate your thoughts and ideas when you have to communicate thoughts and ideas. What's not great is the kind of not old, the
No, you're right.
what happened in the early 90s or whatever with like rational unified process and stuff like that, where the idea was the direction they wanted to take software development was that an architect designs a software system and all the components and interactions, and then that is the actual representation of what's going to be made.
Blueprint.
Yeah, the blueprint, and then they were going to hand that off to developers to just churn out the code. But the thing is that in reality, it's so messy. But in that mentality, and what a lot of architects during that period absorbed was the idea that everything has to be perfectly documented in accordance with reality, so that they can do their top little fiddling.
Well,
Yeah,
everything has to be perfectly documented, and it's not allowed to change.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And the birth of Agile, and Scrum, and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, but there's a lot of architects that grew up during that period and haven't evolved.
They need to die
on
off.
high level. Yeah, we had in my first job, we had a set of architects that were like that. That just like I had the worst experience ever with architecture. It just like it ruined my entire, until I went to my next job that had architects and realized that there was a good way to do it, where they explored new technologies, they dove into specs and made suggestions and challenged your ideas and thoughts and gave insights into things that you hadn't thought about. Like there's a and specifically when you get into things like negotiating contracts and stuff like that with tech companies, helping a CTO maybe do those kinds of things. Like there's a lot of value in those types of architects where they are writing code, but they're not writing code in pursuit of necessarily writing the functional code. They're trying to solve some sort of non-functional constraint or whatever, or to determine whether some component will fit the needs of it, which a senior software or principal software engineer or any software engineer could do themselves too. But I really think that the real purpose of an architect is to focus on non-functional requirements of a system, because there is no other advocate for those types of things. What I mean with the non-functional word, is the security and performance and reliability and maintainability and all of those kinds of other behaviors other than just the functionality itself.
That's an interesting topic. What's the responsibility of an architect? And I say it's the same thing as what's the responsibility of testing and what's the responsibility of design. What do they all have in common? Reducing risk. That's it.
Yeah. But architecture is a discipline apart from, like, what's the difference between a junior architect and a principal software engineer? Like, what are their
number of mistakes made?
Well, yeah, but that in title, a principal software engineer should have more experience, made more mistakes than a junior architect. Like, what are their responsibilities within an organization different? And again, I think of it as
one is responsible for a feature, the other one's responsible for a product.
Yeah, in terms of its broader behavior. One is responsible for functionality. The other one is responsible for how that functionality is delivered, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of its other qualities that it takes on. Like, this can solve the problem, but do we have enough resources and capabilities to ensure it meets requirements that aren't just the functionality? Again, the non-functional stuff. So, which is a bad term for it, but I don't know. But yeah, that's where I draw the line is functional versus non-functional. Software engineers work on the functional, and architects focus on the non-functional, and they meet in the middle, plain and simple. So, but they're not like, there's not a, like, architects aren't and shouldn't be really like gatekeeper or managerial or make certain decisions, without the
Well,
input from the software engineers.
yeah, my
They should be
understanding,
servants of the software engineers, really,
my understanding is,
in the way servant leadership is.
and I kind of agree, is they're meant to be the mediator between the development team and leadership, right, or the board or whatever. They they have the ability to communicate um, to both parties and to reflect the. Feel free to chime in if you strongly disagree, but to provide status of the work and also to manage expectations, right, on both sides.
I think that's management. That's sort of management's job, right?
You don't think architect is part of management?
No, I don't think they should be. I think they should have the same relationship to software engineers as DBAs do.
Does an architect, okay, who makes the decision to fire somebody?
Who makes a decision? Management.
And how does management make that decision?
Well, usually if they're going to fire you, it's based off the fact that someone issued a complaint against you
And
that
who would that
was
be?
backed up.
Would that be coworkers or would that be
Coworkers.
the architect? Like this person isn't.
No, see, I don't. Architects, like, they could be, but they'd be. I mean, you could have, let's just say, within that type of thing, an architect's complaint is probably the same as a janitor's complaint against you.
So it would be the lead developer that would get that ceremony started.
To fire you.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the thing is, management should be having daily interactions or at least weekly interactions with their people. They know what's going on in if they're not pulling their weight, and they should be giving constant feedback, and there should be signs given to them that they're not, they need to step up. How they evaluate their performance, that's a good question, but I don't think it should be based on the subjective opinions of any other person as best it can. There's no objective way to do it either. Somebody could be contributing a lot to a project, considerably, but have no discernible metrics that they are contributing. Their output could be lax or terrible, but maybe they're so they're not doing a lot of features, but maybe they're someone who can magnify the capabilities of other people. I think in mature organizations or organizations that understand the humanity, or maybe empathetic organizations, they realize that everybody's got a part to play in a team, and you got to take the cohesive results of the team to see if and then you can dissect that and figure out, well, is it because people are laxing on their jobs? If you have evidence that people are trying to communicate to you, you're not responding, you're not closing tickets, if you could sit there and ask, what do you do all day, and they can't give you a straight answer. I mean, those kinds of things all get played into whether somebody gets canned or not. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen too many people get canned. I've seen some layoffs. One person got canned at my last job. It was a business analyst person, but we tried working with her, and I was the team lead at the time, and there was an architect on our team too, and he didn't really do it much of anything, to be honest. But we'd have meetings with this person, and it was just, we couldn't get through anything. So I basically was like, here, I'm going to try bringing someone else in, because maybe it's just my personality. Maybe if we brought somebody in with a different frame of mind, maybe we could make this work. And so I didn't want to assume it was that person's problem, because most time people want to do well. And it's just that the chemistry is off. And if you adjust the chemistry, things might change the entire outcome of what you're doing. So we tried a different person who's very different from me in terms of their working styles. And they had problems with this person too. We couldn't make progress. We couldn't get, there wasn't a good pipeline of work. They just didn't they didn't field questions very well, and it was just obvious that they were a hindrance to us performing as well. And I think they canned them. So her. But that was not an architect's decision. That was the fact that it was kind of an obvious situation. So, but I don't know. I've not been in a lot of cases where people have gotten fired. So maybe architects do play a part in firing, but I don't think they should.
I've recommended people to get fired.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Management decided not to. I'm like, well, I don't know why I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't ever want to see anyone get fired. I like, unless they're really, a jerk and not contributing. But I have asked, or requested that, people be shifted around other teams or whatever. Just again, because it's like when you have people working together, there's certain chemistry, and if you can get the chemistry right, you'll be a high functioning team. But if some element comes in that affects that chemistry poorly, you can try shifting stuff around, and it might just, like, people complement each other in great certain ways. Yeah, you just have to do it. You don't want to have too many like alpha personalities, for instance, in a group, but you might want to not have one alpha personality in terms of, how they speak up about things that they care about and stuff like that. I don't know. If you focus on working styles and understanding how people interact and the psychology behind it, and that changes your whole dynamic on how you think of teams. So, but this is a ways away from an architect's responsibility. And I do think they should be like a DBA.
You believe the architect should be like a DBA?
Yeah, in terms of the way that they're structured and how they interact with teams and stuff like that. I mean, DBAs do sysadmin type work as well, but they do also they consult with developers on how best to utilize the tool that they're an expert in, or they're trying to become an expert in, and they give feedback on how to improve the application in order to better take advantage of the tools within the database and stuff. And I think that architects should be the same way. They should be experts on general platform capabilities, and when a software, and they can make suggestions in to developers, software engineers, and they can be consulted with by software engineers or sought for the purposes of making determinations on how to do things a certain way, the best way within a platform, or bringing in new tools to solve a particular technical problem that has nothing to do with necessarily the functionality, but achieving the functionality in a certain way. I think that's again what their goal is, and a lot of times that leads to, like I said, dealing with contract negotiations with software companies that provide services, or when I say services, I mean like software services, or components or whatever.
With vendors.
Yeah, they do, investigations on, like, hey, I need to bring in a caching database or caching tool for this particular thing. Should we use Redis or whatever? Or I want to do searching. We need to do searching. Should we bring in Elasticsearch?
Yeah, that's another thing.
Stuff like those kinds of things.
There's shops that believe that an architect is an architect because they believe that they're an architect because of their knowledge of third-party tools. Like, I had an interview like that, and like, it was for a mobile architect, And none of the questions were about software design or how to build software sustainably over time. All the questions were about vendor tools.
Yeah, that's because that's what architects kind of focus on is the platform that you're on, not the functionality. Functionality and how to deliver that functionality. That's the software engineers.
Uh, I still go back to my original statement of architect is responsible for reducing risk. I don't think it has anything to do with Kafka or Mobile Iron or all these third party vendor tools. Like, yeah, is that stuff valuable? It is valuable, but I don't think you're an architect because you have a plethora of knowledge about which tools to choose. You're an architect to deliver.
Yeah, but maybe they were looking
Make
to
sure to deliver. I think the code is more important than the integration points. Like that stuff is important. It can't get delivered without. But like, I don't think that makes up the bulk of the application. They're important to the system. They're required. But I think what's even more required is like the business rules are met, the interfaces are contracted reasonably well, and that's it. So it's I don't know. It's my personal opinion, but
maybe architects should be renamed. I'm just thinking about this. If like along the lines of if they should be like database administrators, they do administrative work on the database, yes, but they could be thought of as data architects too, or data SMEs or whatever. But I wonder if like architects are really about platform capabilities. I think I really don't think that they should be so much involved with the interaction of components, except for in that how the components, maybe what tools they use to interact with each other. But that doesn't mean that they should make those decisions and then hand them off and be like, I've done my work here. Now you can build on this great platform I've built you. It's again, it should be a pull relationship into the software engineer's world. Now there might be some broader design work that needs to happen in terms of how like larger components interact with each other. But I think that's what a principal software engineer should be responsible for. I don't know if the architecture really matters in those kinds of. I mean, they matters, but it's a different discipline. I don't know. I'm just conjecturing. I just don't like the old school architect thing. So
I don't like architects in general. Hello, Sean, the vintage collector, and hello, Liz. Hi.
I'm not super a vintage collector so much as these are things I have from my childhood, like the Technodrome. I mean,
If and when we hit Masterminds Volume 100, any thoughts about anything special?
I'm surprised we're not on 100 already, to be honest.
We probably are.
There's 52 weeks in a year. We've been doing this for what, 2 years? We should be well over 100.
You got it.
You know what happened is we didn't.
A couple weeks, I'm sure.
Remember we did Skype. I think we were on Skype for a while. That wasn't on. So you probably stopped recording the actual record number during those days. So I don't know. Hackathon. I don't know.
When was the last time you gone on vacation?
I'm on vacation right now.
No, I'm talking about resort. Like I'm talking about like hanging out somewhere outside of your hometown for like a weekend excursion or something.
My canoe trip that I take. That was probably the last time. Yeah. So that was months and months ago. I don't know. Like we don't take a lot of vacations. Like you hear people taking vacations all the time, and I don't know. With kids, I can't. There's something about being with kids in crowded places or unfamiliar places. Like I'm fine and I thrive if it's just me in an unfamiliar place. Like that's exciting. When I have kids, it's a totally different experience. Like I can't enjoy myself whatsoever along with me, and it's not because they're. It's just like there's a switch that flips, and it's like I have to make sure that these kids are safe and not getting into trouble, and where are they and what are they doing, and I don't know.
You can't
It's
like just tranquilize them and leave them in the hotel room.
yeah, Alien Ray Gun's right. It's not a vacation if kids are involved. It's a trip, maybe it's a term, and it might be for their enjoyment or their relaxation, but it's definitely not for mine. So
It's interesting the internet names or internet handles people have. I have two. My first one is Nimrod 2000 mil, and then my other one is Bismonger. Um, yours is at Johnny or what?
yeah, Shwani. That's
Schwani.
how I pronounce it. But that came out of back when I was doing LAN parties a long time ago. I used to have a name I called it like a Trillisk or something, ATRILISK, and I used that for a long time. But then during LAN parties, somebody misspelled my name as Schwan. Then it became Shwani. Then I had Shwani the Killer Bee for a while, and I don't know. Shwani is where I ended up. So that's kind of my handle for most things.
My bar name is Rico. Of course, I haven't used it in a while.
Suave?
Just Rico. In college, my name was Rico. It would be weird because I'll be walking through the mall and like I'll be walking with like one of my friends from like that I grew up with, and I'll hear Rico, Rico. He's like, "Why is he calling you Rico?" So
reminds me of the Penguins movie because there's Rico and Private and.
My stage name is Tall Glass. That's my stage name.
Tall Glass.
That's how you know that the session is about to wrap up.
When you start talking about Tall Glass.
Talking about stage names, club names, internet handles.
Yeah, I don't know. Now my YouTube channel is the Code Mage, so I've been trying to go with that for a YouTube thing.
I like your professional thumbnails on YouTube. My stuff are just screenshots. I don't even create any thumbnails.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, dealing with that, but I think that's one of the side effects of like when you do game development and stuff, you get a little bit of
a stripping name, strip club name.
Yeah.
That's if I decided that software development wasn't working for me and I was just going to like model my body on stage and slide up and down a pole, my name would be Tall Glass. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The thumbnail thing I think it's nice if you have more variety, but I literally just have the same one over and over again because it's just a live stream one. So it's like, I don't know. I'm thinking about going to just doing Twitch streaming instead for this stuff because it's
you can do it simultaneously. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, but I don't know if the archive of having the videos there is useful or not. Maybe if I actually get this thing released and people want to see how it was built, like it documents the whole, strenuous process of it.
Yeah, I don't think people are going to. I don't think people are going to binge watch someone coding over multiple like videos. Like,
yeah, I know. Like, yeah, that's why I'm wondering how valuable they are having them there. It's probably not. I think putting them together in a time lapse might be okay, and then having like maybe a single video about going through the discussions or features and those kinds of stuff. But
happy Hanukkah, Daniel.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
I'm thinking about protesting. What do you call the Jewish candles during the holiday season? Does that have a name to it?
Is it menorah?
I'm not sure, but they have a huge spectacle of it that's lit up at night, and I'm thinking about protesting that. Just like I would protest Christmas trees and everything. Well, Christmas trees isn't really a cross, but it should be a separation of church and state. And I don't think a city should be sponsoring religion.
Well, yeah.
That's me being a hater. And I live in a predominantly Jewish or city.
I'm making you a thumbnail right now. So
There you go.
you just share my screen. I'll show you how the magic works. Just kidding. It's not really.
I'm not photogenic, man.
Just add a layer here. Maybe we'll do that. We'll make it dark.
Why gotta be dark?
There. I didn't say you have to be dark. All I did was just add some sideways to it. We'll get rid of.
Oh. Have you seen the documentary Hail Satan? No, I haven't. I could look it up real fast.
We'll just cut you out here. Like, really, it's not that complicated to make this kind of stuff if you know what you're, if you kind of know what you're doing. Invert selection.
Looks like it's why does it say Russia? Is it a Russian film? Is it on Netflix? I'll look it up.
I get some of your.
Oh, okay.
Here, we'll just copy this image in.
It's interesting how much people want to integrate religion with state. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's some people that obviously do.
I mean, you look at like Saudi Arabia, like they have like laws on blasphemy and they put you to death, right? And it's just interesting how like they integrate their wishes of what God would be into law, and if you don't appreciate what their wishful thinking would be about God, then like you're going to be punished. So yeah, it's messed up.
What do we got here? Let's see. What's your favorite font?
I can't even name more than like two. I'll just say New Times Roman. How many fonts can I name? New Times Roman, Arial, Courier, Gothic, Old English. I can only name 5.
Do I even have New Times Roman on here?
Or it's called Times New Roman.
Times New Roman. Yeah.
When states tried posting the 10 Commandments at the state capitol, the Satanic Temple would petition to erect a, I can't even say that word, Baphomet statue next to it, or not put up the 10 Commandments. In a way, I kind of agree. Like, you gotta ensure that the state is agnostic and they don't favor one religion over another. If you favor one religion over another, then one can make the argument or accusation that you're favoring certain people, even though this is supposed to be equality for all, right? Meaning that everybody is literally equal. But if you start sponsoring a specific religion, the state does, the city does, the country does, then are you really upholding equality, or are you exhibiting favoritism? So that's my dissertation.
This is looking bad.
And it looks better without the color, without the green banner.
But we go with, I don't know, go with dark.
They didn't really care about getting the central, but keeping the 10 Commandments out. Yep.
The one thing about, I mean, there is something to be said about. So I think in Texas or something like that, they allow the 10 Commandments to remain. That's because it becomes a cultural history thing. It's not a support of a particular religion or ideology. It's more like there is Judeo-Christian values, the 10 Commandments, that a lot of laws are built on. So
it all boils down to this: is it a statue or is it a monument? If it's a monument, then it shows favoritism. If it's a statue, then it conveys history. So,
yeah,
a monument is something we praise. Yeah, I'll check it. Alien Ray Gun, where are you from? Or where are you operating at? And why is it that the majority of people, like all three observers of my channel, they're always like European or Mexican or like very few of them were like
probably because you're F sharp.
Yeah. Well, that doesn't explain
a lot of. Oh yeah, I don't know why that would be.
But it's very few Americans. I think ethics is a good alternative to religion. And he's in Thailand. But you're an expat. That means if you're an expat and you're in Thailand, that means you're older. Yeah. Meaning that, like, I honestly, when I lived in the Philippines, there weren't too many people that were like in their 20s or 30s that were American living in Asia. I could be wrong. I'm really good at stereotyping.
Ethics and just to answer Daniel's thing here, ethics and religion are they're related and compatible, but they're I don't think you could consider one as an alternative. There are ethical systems related to or based in religion, but very few of those are considered valid ethical systems. But
I think all ethics. I mean, I'm speaking in absolutes, but I think they're all based on religion, because I think almost all religions have like the same rules about what makes you a bad person.
Or do religions just reflect ethical systems? That's probably the broader case.
Well,
human ethics, like ethical systems, arise out of natural human discourse, and religion will grows to reflect that as a system, like an overall system for somebody's life or whatever. But religion's a lot more about asking metaphysical questions or the nature of existence and providing some sort of answer to it. If the answer is wrong,
I would argue religion is about giving people closure about death.
Yeah. Well, originally, like religion was about trying to master your environment and trying to deal with the fact that we're in this like completely hostile environment that we can't control. So that's why if you look at the historical gods that were created in mythology, they all were related to particular natural phenomenon. So you had Poseidon was the god of the sea, and you would pray to Poseidon for safe passage or whatever. And if you didn't, then you were out of favor with Poseidon, and clearly you had done something wrong.
Yeah, but
how large sense of it?
But how large was the Roman Empire and the people that believed that?
Well, those were I believe that was Greeks, but the equivalency within Rome
Right.
was, Jupiter or whatever. And I don't know who Poseidon was. I can't remember, but
Well, there is a Greek Empire because Greece is smaller than Italy, or no?
well, the Greeks were a pretty powerful force in the in early Europe, weren't they? Or they were a bastion of society and stuff like that. You just
Oh,
not seen the movie 300?
well, those are Spartans,
The
but
Trojan horse,
was that an actual tribe
Socrates.
of Greece?
Yeah, I think so. Well, the Athenians, or the people that came over to with the Trojan horse, those were Greeks, but Socrates and Aristotle and you know the all of the classic, like, we have a lot of mythology that came out of Greek, but anyways, that's beside the point. It was all based around the idea of natural phenomenon, and so was Celtic and Norwegian, and pretty much every early god was based around these natural phenomenon and trying to have some measure of control over it.
Mm,
Um,
You're speaking from the perspective of a regional belief system, not like what did Asians share something similar? Did Africans share something similar? The Native Americans, which some may argue kind of relate to Asia. Like, I'm curious if that's really humanity or if that's just regional to European belief system historically.
I'm I don't know enough about the earlier religions in those areas, but I'm fairly certain pretty much that's like a natural phenomenon that happened in every region. I know, like, I mean, definitely within Native American cultures and stuff, there's naturalism and spirits that have control over natural elements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And but I think they were much more, probably more about fluidity with them than they were trying to control them. But it's a projection of some sort of, like, a lot of it is the projection of some sort of natural thing that you can't control, and trying to gain some sort of explanation or control over this hostile environment that you have. And as soon as that, we start to understand elements enough, that stuff started falling away. If you what there's an essay by God, what's his Freud, who talks about why God in, like, the Judeo-Christian sense came about, and how he explains it, which isn't to say that it's not real. He's just saying this is an explanation for how it came. Is that when you're young, as a child, you believe that your parent or whatever can kind of protect you from all of these elements. So you have this relationship with a father figure or a mother figure, whatever, some sort of paternal figure that can protect you from all these elements, and they are immune to all of these things that would harm you. And then when you get old enough, you realize that they're not they're just as subject to this as you. So you have to project that relationship, and you project it into the sky. And so that's why you have all this imagery around God the Father in Judeo-Christian sense, because that's the projection of what you're trying to achieve. Is you're trying to replace that relationship you had with your parents as a kid, as an adult, to some other being that does have this control over the broad control over the environment and
Yeah,
stuff,
that's what Democrats
to
are for.
protect you and save you and stuff like that. Not no.
That's
But
that's half the country. They want government to look after them and say it's not your fault, my child. Like, yeah.
yeah, I
I
mean,
really do believe that. Like, I think that's one of the huge differences between Democrats and Republicans. Um, but yeah,
yeah, I wonder too if eventually Democrats will swing around to being more on the more conservative side of thing. You can see that libertarianism in terms of social stuff is actually seeping broader into the Republican side of the world. And Democrats are, I mean, if you look at the differences between a 70s era Democrat and, like, free, everything should be like free love, man. And the classical hippie versus like, you must listen to the government, control your life, lock down COVID, blah, 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 of today's Democrats. And it is a totally different mindset in terms of freedom.
I know people like that. Like speaking for them, they believe the government is their father figure, right? It's their government is daddy, and daddy knows best, right?
Yeah. And there's so many vectors to that, though. Like individualism versus collectivism is, part of it. And yeah, I mean, religion plays a part. But there's a lot more to it.
Americans not too much.
No, too much.
Not too much.
I think social system is a good thing. Yeah, I don't think anybody disagrees that a good social system is a good thing. I mean, society is built around it. But why we put so much, why there was a lot of focus on individual liberty and stuff like that is because when you get into a system where there's a majority, it can easily become tyrannical over a minority.
Is that not what the United States is?
No, I mean, it's what systems try to become. But no, it's not. In terms of individuality and freedoms, it's trying not to be, or it's trying to put enough balance in there. Part of that's the reason why things like the Electoral College exist. Right.
It's going to spawn another conversation.
Yeah.
But systemic racism.
We could take that out of it. Bill of Rights. That's why the Bill of Rights exists. Why things like freedom of speech and freedom of religion and the right to bear arms and stuff like that. All of those things are built around trying to protect, and the court system in general is trying to protect. The idealism behind it is to protect individual liberty against potentially tyrannical majority. This is why you can say things like religion should be separate, because if you allow the majority, and the majority is Judeo-Christian, they can say, yeah, the 10 Commandments can be here because we are the majority and we decide they are going to be. But that's not what the Constitution allows. That's putting a check on it and saying, no, I don't have to live by those ideals because that's a majority. Even though it's the majority, that's a tyrannical position for me to be in if you force me to follow a particular religion. That's the balance that they're trying to achieve here, is how do you have a society and how do you protect the minority in terms of thought.
If we're talking about the social system, like I guess I abuse the race card because I'll pull it out again. Like it's the social system is not equal, right? You ever watch YouTube videos on auditors of whatever amendments? Like if a state is open carry, like be a young black male and just walk around with your pistol and see if the police, law enforcement respects that law, right? It's not equal. And so I know this has nothing to do with religion, but
yeah, I didn't say anything about equality in terms of enforcement.
To me, it's social system, right? So if we're talking about why the Constitution was created, right? It's not being enforced the same way for everybody. It's not.
Well, it is. I'm assuming if you're talking about certain freedoms and stuff like that, which is what it addresses, and the relationship of government in terms of how it can make laws, and when those laws get struck down, and how the judicial system can put a check on those kinds of things. That's totally different from just how does the executive branch of a government, how does it actually process stuff. That's just something that has to come with progression, though, and we make progression.
Progression by what? Bloodshed. That's the only way things really change.
No, not
Okay.
necessarily.
Well, what the civil rights movement, right? Well, how did things change? Was it because people asking, please let us be treated equally? Or was it cameras shooting footage of violence, right? That finally resulted in the United States having to answer for themselves.
Yeah, which way was the violence though?
Well, what was recorded in the marches were a whole bunch of racist white folks in the South, throwing rocks and beating up black folks and any other white people that dared to march with the black people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's exposing the reality of the situation. That's different from potentially bringing up arms and trying to cause change through revolution. That's a totally different ball game. What you need to give people is a reflection of themselves. And I think if, like, when we talked about the George Floyd stuff, we go back to that. I think a lot of people, that was a wake up call, and it really did bring a particular, because the whole standing on the neck thing was very brutal. And I think you had almost near universal agreement on that, and everybody was willing. And then what happened was violence started happening, and that took the eye away from everything. And then you started with, or not you, but yeah, it started with the things like defund the police and stuff like that, which was never the discussion, but it became the tagline. And it's such an easy thing to glob onto, but it was an awful slogan. It still is an awful slogan, because that's not what anybody in a reality situation was talking about. They're talking about reforming how we do policement and enforcement, and providing alternative options to it. And I think anybody with any intellectual curiosity towards that, or wanting to solve the problem, thinks about it in that way. But but that's not the slogan. And most people who are just going about their lives see defund police and go, no, I don't want more murders to happen, which is now going up. But I don't want all this stuff to go bad, and I want more police because they're working for me in the way that I want them to work. And then everything falls apart.
Real talk is, for humans, like, change doesn't come unless people die off. Period. It's the same thing with software development. It's the same thing with anything that people strongly disagree on, right? You have to wait for them to die off.
Yeah. So
in order for there to be less restrictive forces, right?
So what you're saying is what I said, is that as time progresses, and as long as you keep an eye on things and bring up what's happening, progress happens. It takes time. It can't necessarily happen in your lifetime, unless you're talking about
it takes generations.
Unless you're talking about killing off everybody who disagrees with you, and then we're in a different ball game. And I don't even want to,
Well, I mean, but that's what war is. That was the Revolutionary War, right? That's what this country, part of what this country is based on, right? Is killing off the British influence, right? The people that try to come here and enforce collection of taxes, right, without representation, etc.
Hopefully, we've moved beyond that in terms of needing a war. We've seen how well the war on drugs has done for everybody, right? We've got to be cautious with the way that we think about the term war and what we put our war on. But I mean, the civil rights movement wasn't a war. It might have been a cultural war in their minds, but it wasn't a violent war. In terms of like, the people wanting to see the change weren't being violent.
The civil rights movement,
there was some, but not.
The civil rights movement was a strategy of, let's get cameras so that people can't deny that this is happening, and the plan worked. There was violence, but it wasn't necessarily black people. It was your down south southern whites that believed in white superiority, and black people are inferior, and so what? They used to be slaves. Yeah. They will never be equal. They should not stand next to us and cast their vote for no, F that. These people are below us.
Yeah, and I'm agreeing with you, is that change happened through that stuff. But The thing is like, take the same thing now. You put cameras out there. Let's just talk about pure imagery we see. George Floyd, you get that imagery. Everybody's in agreement. This is bad. Let's make a change. We got to fix this. Solve it. Let's try to figure out how to do this. Immediately followed by imagery of riots and burning of giant buildings and people's property and businesses getting looted. That imagery does the exact opposite of what you'd want to see, right?
I don't think so. I think that's what caused reform. I really do.
I don't think anybody. No, you know what the reform is then? It's call in the National Guard and shut those people down. Is what goes through the mind of everybody who's looking at that, because that's what they see if they're in a law-abiding, like, you know, if they're not necessarily like part of that movement. It's the same thing though, that what you said with the civil rights. You show a bunch of white people that were throwing rocks and you know, violence towards people and lynchings and all that, and you see a reflection and you look at that and go, no, that's not what I'm about. That's not what I want to be. And then change happens because people come to that. And that's the same thing with happened with George Floyd. That's not who I am. I'm not going to stand on someone's neck. I don't want that to happen. People get that feeling. Then they see riot and looting and they go, no, I don't want that either.
I think that is what caused
a reflection I don't want.
No one wants it, but that's apparently what had to happen in order for things to change, right? So
no.
Yes, because they're society, especially with emphasis on politicians, they're not proactive; they're reactive, right? So when you show a whole bunch of savages, right, breaking glass and breaking into, I don't know, expensive stores, and this is going to happen into your local neighborhood, then it's fear, right? Everything is based on fear. Government rules off of fear. Religion rules off of fear. Like, it's necessary in order to get people to do what you want. Why do we pay? Why? It's not okay. Explain why the largest. You could correct me. I don't think it's healthcare, right? But what's the largest bucket that our taxes go into? I honestly don't believe it's healthcare.
It's defense.
It's defense, right? Yeah. I could be wrong. If it's not defense, it is healthcare, but they're still related because they're both based on fear, right? It is. So what other catalyst is there? There's not. People reform happens when people are terrified of the alternative. That's why you have cafes in Israel getting blown up by people with vests, because they're trying to force reform.
Yeah, but it reacts in the opposite way of what you'd expect is the problem. The entire war on terror is a reaction to 9/11. It's a multiple reaction, but it's not necessarily perhaps the best thing that could have happened. I think that you already had the shock and awe from, like I said, if we just isolate this to the George Floyd thing, you already had that. But when backdrop to everything that happened after, you don't think about that event as much. And I don't think that did any good. What change happened now? There are certain, areas that have reduced their police funding.
I think
what change have we seen for all of the stuff that happened, all the extra lives that were lost, and all of the looting and all the business shops that were blown up? This year.
What you see is the other extreme. Google the city of Seattle. It's the complete opposite now. Now, like, I mean, and they have documentaries on this where, like, cops are being watched like microscopes, and like they now they really have my understanding is they're having a tougher time with law and order, right? You have people or drug addicts that are just running around doing whatever, and the probability of them being held accountable for their crimes is a lot lower today than it was pre-George Floyd. So
that's it. That's it.
Extreme.
That's it, though. Pre-George Floyd. George Floyd was the catalyst. It wasn't all of the, like, and yeah, the peaceful demonstrations that happened after I mean, I don't think anybody said that was bad or anything. It's, you were talking about the need for violence to get this stuff to happen. And all it was is a reflection of the violence that was happening, or the wrongdoing that was already happening. That was the catalyst. When you tack on additional wrongdoing, like you did, like what happened after the, and I'm not saying this was actually even Black Lives Matter or any of
violence with the need for fear, but
yeah, I don't think it was. I don't think that was a catalyst at all. I think, if anything, that stopped a lot of additional progress from happening, because people saw all the additional stuff and said, well, yeah, they're burning down buildings and blocking roads and they're shooting people. And I'm not saying they in terms of Black people. I'm saying there was a lot of white people, actually, mostly probably doing this, that did all of this extra stuff. And you see that and went, well, we can't really get rid of defund police, because otherwise this is what's going to happen, all this anarchy.
yeah.
And if you get it, that's why I'm saying it's like, all that really needed to happen was to really give a reflection, or enough reflection of those things that people don't want to be in their lives. And if you do that, and if you can draw attention, and you're right, that's the way you do it. You do it, and that's what George Floyd video did for a lot of things, is it brought out that again, near universal agreement that this shouldn't be the way things are for people. And it brought attention to it in a way that was tragically positive. But then when backdrop to all of the rioting and stuff that happened after, that just reverted all of that progress that could have come out of that, I think. So I don't think that people need to riot and burn down buildings and stuff like that to see change happen. I think all that needs to happen is to show you a side of you don't want to be, and enough of it where you feel like you want to make a change, or you're willing to advance stuff. And I think most people were, and still are, but none of that happens because of the riot. If you think the rioting changed anybody's minds and made them want to see change, you are dead wrong. I guarantee you that.
I think they know what people are capable of when they're not treated fairly.
But the thing is we don't, like, and I say we because I'm in a comfortable place. Not, again, that this is a black-white thing, because, again, a lot of white people, I just want to make that clear. Mm-hmm. But people like me who are in a comfortable place, all that rioting just took the way from it, and totally just it neutralized pretty much all of the near universal agreement people had among people. it just did. And it's a terrible thing. I think, like I said, you're right that you need to have that visibility around when things are happening that are not what you as a person want to be about. And I don't want to be about standing on someone's neck. You show me that, I don't want that. And I would have a very real discussion, or people would have a very real discussion about how do we solve this, in terms of, like you said, changing the reforming police practices, maybe, providing different types of education, and there was that stuff. But you show me rioting and that stuff, it's like, no, you know what? Get the police in there, get the National Guard in there, shut that shit down, because I don't want that either.
So here's a counterexample to what you said, at least I think it is, right? So in New York, the heavyset dude that was selling loose cigarettes, you familiar with that?
Yep.
Okay. That was caught on camera. I think there is universal agreement that that was unnecessary force for that type of crime. I think there is universal agreement. I'm genuinely interested in why didn't reform start there versus with George Floyd.
How do you know it didn't?
There's also the one in Cleveland, the 12-year-old boy. I can't remember his name. Where he had like a toy gun. Cops pulled up and within like 5 seconds shot him dead. Why didn't it happen there? Right? There's a number of examples of what I would call police involved atrocities that have happened to young black males or just people of color that have been caught on video, right?
Yeah.
On video. The crime is caught on video and nothing happens. But with the George Floyd, the difference was not only was it caught on video, but the nation was set ablaze for about 2 weeks.
No,
And
I think with Ferguson, the same shit happened with setting ablaze and stuff like that. The thing is that you need what you need is enough evidence, like enough to get it into the national psyche. If you had one video of just one of a black person having a bad altercation with a police officer, would that be enough to change the discourse? For nationwide, 300 million people across various cultures and stuff like that. And I have and I've got almost no black people in my area, so I never see it. One video, not going to do anything. 2 videos, not going to do much. 3, 4, how many videos it takes? Eventually you reach a tipping point. It just, it has to keep documenting and building, and it has.
There is no tipping point. This has been going on since like day one. It has. This has been going on before our generation. It's been going on before my parents' generation. It hasn't stopped. It hasn't.
Well, yeah, right? but you got to realize that to reach the national psyche to invoke certain changes on a national level, yeah, it requires enough of that video evidence you talked about, which has been being collected and is starting to make a movement. And has absolutely nothing to do with the rioting. I guarantee you.
If that were the case, then, and I'm not attacking you, but if that, if that were the case, there's saying Palestine and Israel. There's footage after footage after footage of Palestinians getting gunned down. And I'm not changing the subject. I'm showing an example, or I'm at least trying to articulate an example. And my argument is that's not the case where it's the straw that broke the camel's back. It's not. It's going to keep going because after a while we just become desensitized to it. We do. You know how many things make headline news in the morning and we forget about it the next morning? Like, okay, was it Nashville? It was somewhere where there was a Christmas bombing? I don't really watch TV, but like I can't tell you the details of it because it's not significant, right? That's how desensitized I am to it right now. And I'm sure there's a lot of people like me where they don't even know the bomber's name. They don't even know what city it happened in. We become desensitized after it happens so many times. It is. You can disagree, but you okay.
I think, but the thing is, I don't think, like I said, I don't think additional violence on top of it is what makes movement. I think when people see themselves see an America they don't want, or see a situation they don't want to see, and they will try to make changes towards the better, but it's slow and it has to take progress. What we're talking about is the evidence now might not make the immediate. It's not going to probably solve it in your lifetime, but maybe what it does is that the imagery and all of the videos and all of the discourse around it, not the rioting, but the actual discussion, gets in the psyche of the next generation. And as the next generation grows up to become the ones that are making the laws, they have this backdrop of this information. And that's the thing, is you're not going to solve this right away. It's just not going to be solved right away. And defunding the police isn't going to solve it right away, because what's going to happen as soon as some other thing takes the thing, as right now, news is starting to point out that murder went up, and then you put that as the backdrop with defund police at the same time, those things are going to start canceling each other out, which is why defund police was always a terrible, terrible, terrible marketing term for it, as I've said before. And so like I said, I think Black Lives Matter was also a terrible marketing term. The movement's fine and dandy, and it's good and needed. It's just the way that it's marketed is bad. But like I said, it needs to get into the psyche so it grows, and whether you think it or not, there's progress has been made clearly among a lot of people's minds. I mean, in a generation, take 3 generations ago, where were we at with racism? You think it's worse now? Really?
Well, to your point, I think I'm a prime example of, or lack of progress that has been made. Right. When I'm very focused, when I'm highly motivated, I'm able to have a lifestyle that a lot of people probably in the past generations didn't think people that look like me would be capable of having. Right.
Yeah.
At times I take it for granted what I have and the access that I have. But yeah, maybe my father's generation, like, nah, you're not gonna live in a
So you just
predominantly Orthodox Jewish neighborhood and live amongst them. You know, these people that have money, you can't live with those people,
yeah.
right?
So you just pointed out there is progress. It's just not at the pace that you desire, not at the pace that most people desire. I guarantee you, probably, if it, like, I'm guessing even 50 years ago, if I was raised the way it was 50 years ago, we wouldn't be talking. I'd be like, oh no, Scott's a black guy. I can't talk to him. I'm gonna get all of like racism. I don't care about that shit, you know. But that's because and I mean that's just because progress happens in a generational level. It's not and it's hard to see because it happens slowly.
Yeah, but people don't have time to wait, right? This is the only life we have. I mean, you could believe in whatever you want to believe in regards to afterlife, but like, it's important because this is the only time we have on this earth, right? And we don't want that to be limited, right?
Oh, will
Based
be.
on,
We'll have it whether things are equal or not.
well, some people have a different mentality.
And as soon as things get equal between races, guess what? There's going to be something new. I mean,
Oh,
there
that's
already
fine.
is.
That's progress. We move on to something else.
Yeah.
Right? Daniel says, is it for Black people more difficult to get a job in IT in the U.S. because of racism? Let me. What do you think? I understand you're not Black, but have you ever interviewed a Black programmer?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have I? Yes.
You have to
Yeah.
think about it.
Well, you got to give context to it. Let's just say I was in the deep south. The likelihood of me, interviewing a black developer probably considerably higher than me being in northern Minnesota. Um, and that's just because northern Minnesota is predominantly white Norwegian,
Okay.
German, and it's the nature of the area we live in. And not to say that
Got it.
black people don't live here. And in fact, I mean, George Floyd happened in Minneapolis, but I don't live in an inner city either or near a city. I live in rural areas. But yeah, we had, oh gosh, when I was interviewing, I mean, I go to colleges. So yeah, I interviewed a fair number of, blacks, both Africans and African Americans, a fair number being as much as you can expect in colleges around northern Minnesota. A lot more Asians probably, really, because
Yeah.
you get and a lot of them were people we couldn't actually even hire because they would have
Or-
to have sponsorship.
So, so here's my answer, Daniel. Is it more difficult to get a job in IT in the U.S. because of racism? My answer, based on word for word what you asked, is yes. All right, that might be shocking to most people in the states that live here because they would disagree. All right, and the reason why I say yes is because I believe that in order to be taken seriously, to have the same opportunities with the same pay for someone with my experience in air quotes, I sincerely believe, and it may be like some mental issue with me, right? I may be delusional, but I sincerely believe that I have to be better than the typical white person in order to have the same opportunities. I really do believe that. And I know I'm not alone. Now, is that truth? Is that fact? It may not be. But my mind tells me in order to have the same opportunities and to get the same, I, I don't want average pay. I want the salary cap, right? In order to get what I believe I'm worth, I believe that I have to demonstrate way more skill, problem solving, design, etc., than my white counterparts. And again, that may not be true, but that's what drives me, and that's what I believe. And I think Odie would say the same thing. And he's in Nigeria. And when I was talking to him and we recorded it, he was saying how there's stereotypes about, Nigerians, and are they really qualified to do that type of work? And there's always side thoughts, and people won't like acknowledge it verbally. But yeah, sometimes when I'm hired, I wonder if I was really hired because I'm a diverse candidate, or did they hire me because I believe I'm a beast and they think I'm a beast too? Like, that goes through my mind.
Yeah. So there's a subjective experience there that may or may not be reality, but it is what you experience anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I mean, I like from my perspective, I mean, I'm assuming that there is plenty of places that racism exists because there's just such a broad level of companies hiring software engineers. But the majority of IT that I see, I mean, I don't see a lot of racism particularly towards Black people, maybe towards Indians. There's a general sentiment towards Indians that's probably not warranted. I'm not suggesting, but it's the feeling you get. Maybe it's just because conversing with, and I'm talking about Indians from Indians. And you've even probably just in our calls before expressed this. I have to talk to some guy over in India about a job in the US, which is a very kind of ethnocentric way of perceiving it. But that thought goes through everyone's head. There's a language barrier there.
Well, it's
that's
the
hard
fact
to
that I
deal
was
with.
interviewing for a job here in Miami.
Yeah.
I live in Miami, and they're forcing me to interview with an Indian company in order to get this job in Miami.
Yeah.
And that company is in India, and I'm like, what? That doesn't make sense to me. It's not computing. Why are they the gatekeeper and this is a local job, right? And like when I had my interview, like I'm speaking for that person specifically, right? He wasn't qualified to interview me. He wasn't, right?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Indians. I'm talking about that particular person. He wasn't qualified.
But in his subjective mind, he might be thinking that this interview candidate didn't think I'm worthy of his time because I'm Indian. And if I was a white interviewer, that would be different. See, it all kind of it goes to subjectivism.
It's fair for him to say, but even and you know what? To be fair, if it was a UK office that interviewed me, I probably, to be fair and to be real with myself, I probably wouldn't have been as agitated, and maybe that is an issue with me, right? If I really think about it and say, well, I have the same response if it was, a UK company.
Yeah.
But I still feel that strong emotionally about it. That's really a gut check, man. Yeah, maybe I do have something to work on.
Yeah, and I mean that's what I'm saying is within the IT industry, like within software, and like, I don't know if there's probably a barrier to entry just in getting people interested in computer science and making it through maybe the school and stuff that's necessary and having the opportunities to get there. But that's a school issue. Once you get into the IT industry, I think most software developers that you meet, except for maybe certain like old timey architects, they're pretty well progressive in terms of how they think about, teams and race and women and men, and all of that. Now there's probably more sexism than there is racism. I'd have to bet, because there's a sexual dynamic that is different.
I think so. Something else that was difficult is is culture. Like, okay, so all the males in my family prior to my generation, um, they all work in the trades, right? Like construction. They they lay drywall. They're electricians. They pour concrete. Um, it's just the way it is in my family, right? Going like, because I can only go like maybe two generations back, and so pretty much like skilled laborers, maybe. And so for me to get my job as a knowledge worker in a white collar job, not blue collar, like I was like the first. I mean, you know, my generation was like the first like white collar, type workers. And so one thing I noticed was I had to really concentrate on speaking properly at work. And it sounds like but like if if you're raised in an environment where like you're used to just speaking comfortable and you don't use proper grammar because you've never been held accountable for it, and everybody around you, they speak, you know they use broken grammar, and so like that's how you just casually talk. Like, it's something that white folks, when I started working, pointed out, and I had to really like work on like how I'm supposed to speak within a professional like office environment. So like again, I think people would take that for granted, but it was something that I really had to concentrate on for like the first maybe 2-3 years of my career. Is I'm I'm not at home. I'm not in my neighborhood, right? I'm surrounded by white people, white professionals, and like there's a certain standard of communication that's expected for me. And I mean, I, I'm not challenging that. I think it's, yeah, you're supposed to meet those type of standards. It was just something that was very conscious that I had to like work on. So
Hmm.
it's I'm almost positive people take that for granted. You know.
Oh, well, it's the grammar Nazi thing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like that runs rampant in our industry. Like if you get like there's a lot of developers that are very particular about grammar, and they'll call you out on every grammar mistake. And it's so then you probably take that tendency and amplify it um, based on just cultural differences, and it comes out really really bad, I suppose.
And here's a other difference, Daniel. And I mentioned this when I was on that Developer on Fire podcast. When I'm hired, I believe that it's my opportunity to set an example so that it's easier for other people that look like me to get hired. And it's weird. It's like I feel like they're not just hiring me to help them. They're hiring like the African American race or culture. And like I feel like I have to really hold myself to a certain standard so that other people that look like me, as I rub my skin, have the same opportunity to make that same type of money and to earn that lifestyle. And so I won't really say it's pressure. I just feel like there's times where someone may say something that I really don't like, and I think it's like that's borderline like disrespectful, and I just can't just pull out the streets and just start go on a tirade on that person. I like have to compose myself and just bite my lip and just continue being professional. Else, I'm going to f it up for other people that look like me that also want to work there, right? Want to work in IT, and I mean we're pattern matching creatures. We are. That's why some of us are racist as hell, based on what we watch, what we consume. And so, like, I don't want to mess it up for other people that look like me. So, like, I feel like I have to hold myself to a certain standard at work. Now, like on the internet, like I don't really care as much, and maybe I should. But at work, yeah, it's like I feel like there's certain things I just can't say. There's certain topics I can't include myself in. I'll just let them talk about that. because I know that it's not going to benefit me if I involve myself in those type of conversations. So that's something else I just have to take into consideration for other people.
Oh, cool. It's been 2 hours. I think I have to
Yeah.
I got to tap out.
That's real.
I wanted to work on that thing today too a little bit. So,
All right. Well, good stuff. And sorry, I completely forgot. I honestly don't even remember that we had scheduled for Wednesday. But,
yeah, we were gonna do it for 2 weeks because it's New Year's on Friday. So,
okay.
which isn't as big of a day, but I don't know. It's New Year's, so it's a holiday technically. But we can get back to Friday next week. So, the 8th.
All right. Well, it's been real. Thanks. Take care. See you
Have
down
a good one.
the road.
Talk to you next week. Bye.
Yeah, adios. No, I thought